Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story. Get ready, something incredible is coming. I used to think love could tackle any hurdle that came our way. No matter how loud our shouting matches got or how icy the nights felt when we hit the sack without a word, I figured me and Emma would always patch things up. Every spat, every cutting remark, seemed like just a rough patch we'd ride out side by side. But man, was I off the mark, and clinging to that hope ended up hitting me hard. Back when we first tied the knot, everything seemed picture perfect, like our hearts were cut from the same cloth. Each grin, each little brush of her hand, felt like a vow that we'd be together forever. But as the years rolled by, I started catching these subtle shifts in Emma, stuff I brushed off as no big deal at the time. Early on, it was just a quiet huff or a quick flash of annoyance whenever I screwed up. I'd tell myself it was just her being stressed or having an off day, not seeing that those were the first hairline fractures in what we'd built. Pretty soon, those hints got too loud to tune out. Emma's words started slicing deeper, her voice dripping with this snarky edge. Whenever she opened her mouth, there was this sharpness that carved right through my good intentions. Those warm, caring eyes I used to lose myself in. They began staring past me, like I was just some weight dragging her down. I kept trying to shrug it off, telling myself the love we had was still kicking somewhere under all the harsh jabs and awkward silences. It wasn't just how she treated me that flipped. Her whole way of living took a turn too. She started jetting off on these girls' trips more and more. Each time she came back, she'd be all lit up and buzzing, like she'd tapped into some piece of herself I couldn't even touch. Meanwhile, I was stuck at home, my body starting to give out as I dealt with this nagging sickness that kept getting worse. I'll never forget this one night, just a couple days before we were supposed to head to Arizona, when I doubled over in agony. I was gripping my gut, begging for some kind of break, hoping she'd step up and help me out. But Emma? She just rolled her eyes and tossed out a half-hearted, "It's probably just gas, Jake. You'll live." Man, I wish she'd paid attention, seen how bad I was hurting. The doc had already warned me something was up, maybe my appendix acting up, but that red flag didn't even register with her. All she cared about was keeping her schedule on track, like my suffering was just a pesky little hiccup in her plans. I tried to talk myself down, thinking maybe I was blowing it out of proportion, that I needed to toughen up and cut her some slack. But deep down, I knew I was getting ditched by the one person who'd sworn to stick with me through thick and thin. Nights like that, I'd lie there wide awake, running every second of our life through my head, trying to pinpoint where it all went south. I kept asking myself if my love was enough to turn things around, if time could somehow ease the ache I was feeling. But instead, I just felt like a ghost of the guy I used to be, some dude who believed in fairy tales, who thought real love could bulldoze any mess. Day by day, it hit me that love can sometimes drag you down a road paved with backstabbing and neglect. That Arizona trip was supposed to be our fresh start, a shot at stitching up the rips that had been tearing us apart. I was banking on those wide-open views and nature's magic to glue our busted connection back together. But even as I wrestled with the pain and this sinking disappointment, there was this gnawing little voice in my skull whispering that something was seriously off. I started getting this hunch that the trip wasn't really about us, it was Emma's ticket out, her way to ditch a life she couldn't handle anymore. In those dragging, miserable hours before we left, I clung to the good old days like they were my last lifeline. I'd replay her soft giggles, the tender way she'd grab my hand when we'd stroll together. Those memories were all I had to keep me afloat in this flood of doubt and hurt. But sitting there in the faint glow of our house, my body crumbling and my chest heavy, I knew the woman I'd fallen for had checked out ages ago. I should have caught those red flags waving in my face. I should have battled harder to hold us together. Instead, I let those tiny slights pile up until they turned into this gaping canyon between us. Looking back now, I see how my pig-headed optimism screwed me over. I turned a blind eye to the pain, the disrespect, the way we kept drifting apart, all because I was chasing some dumb idea of love. And in the process, I forgot what really mattered, looking out for myself. I wish I'd tuned into that quiet gut feeling telling me something was wrong, screaming that this trip wasn't just a getaway, it was a fork in the road for us. I wish I'd figured out sooner that love can sometimes wear a mask of indifference and carelessness. Now, staring back at where we've been, I get it. The life I'd pieced together with Emma was falling apart, and I was powerless to stop the collapse. Even as I geared up for that trip, hauling around my beat-up body and the weight of all those shattered promises, I couldn't shake this vibe that I was headed straight into some pitch-black unknown. I can still picture pulling up to the Grand Canyon's edge like it's burned into my brain. My legs were shaky, every move a fight against this searing pain in my gut that had been getting uglier since the night before. That huge desert stretched out in front of me, baking under a ruthless sun, and I could feel my energy draining with every wobbly step. Emma, though. She looked like she'd come alive out there in that dry wasteland. Her smile was dazzling, her laugh bouncing around us with this vibe that hit me with both a spark and a sting. I tried to match her energy, even though every twitch reminded me something was seriously messed up inside. For a while, I'd had this sneaking feeling the trip wasn't just about getting away, it was a tipping point, something that had ripped the blindfold off truths I'd been too stubborn to face. When we parked by that lookout spot, I could hardly stay upright, every shuffle a war against this fire inside me that had zilch to do with the canyon's postcard views. I mumbled something about needing a breather, but Emma just chuckled it off, saying the fresh air would perk me up. "It'll be good for you, Jake," she tossed out, her tone half pep talk, half brush off. I stood there, caught between appreciating her nudge and this creeping dread I couldn't shake. It felt like every word out of her mouth was part of some script I never signed up for. I stumbled a few steps from the car, trying to lock my eyes on the horizon, hoping maybe the desert's charm could dull the hurt for a bit. Then, out of nowhere, like some sick cosmic joke, I heard the car door slam and the engine kick to life. I spun around, dizzy and frail, just in time to see Emma by the door. Her face wasn't worried, it was lit up with this weird glee, a look I'd caught before when her words had gutted me, but never this final. She gave this slow, almost stagey wave as she swung the door open. Her eyes had this glint I couldn't pin down, miles away from the love I used to know. Then, with a sharp click, the door slammed shut, and the car peeled out, kicking up a dust cloud that smeared the line between what was real and what I wished wasn't. There I was, my heart hammering like it was keeping time with the betrayal unfolding in front of me. I couldn't wrap my head around it, this moment felt too wild to be real, but it was playing out right there. The desert, with its endless sprawl and raw truth, turned into this messed up theater where my life was getting torn down on purpose. My whole body shook, not just from the pain ripping through me with every pulse, but from this shock that choked the air out of my lungs. I'd trusted her, bought into every promise we'd swapped. And now, I was stranded, alone. Every gut instinct was yelling that something was way off. The brutal truth sank in as I watched her car vanish over the edge of the world. This trip wasn't about fixing us or patching up old scars, it was Emma picking a road that left me in the dust, scrapping everything we'd put together. Loneliness, rage, and grief hit me like a sucker punch, her fading laugh mixing with the wind's howl. I tried to yell, to figure out what the hell was happening, but my voice got swallowed up in the desert's huge, empty silence. With every tick of the clock, it got clearer, I wasn't just left behind by accident, I'd been ditched on purpose, stabbed in the back by the one person I never thought would turn on me. I dropped to my knees on that dry, ruthless ground. The searing ache in my gut got drowned out by this soul-crushing feeling of being ditched. The sky up there, once so bright and full of hope, turned heavy and chilling, mirroring the empty hole she'd gouged into my chest. Right then, I felt tied to that brutal terrain around me, a spot where everything's real, unpolished, and downright unforgiving. The desert couldn't give a damn about the dreams we'd cooked up, and it sure didn't shed a tear for the smashed-up vows of a marriage going down the tubes. When I fought to get back on my feet, I knew the road ahead was gonna be a gritty brawl, me against the weather and this suffocating load of backstabbing. I had to face it, the woman I'd poured my heart into had left me to tackle this wasteland solo, and the hurt wasn't just in my body, it was a loud warning of the bigger scars waiting down the line. That day sticks with me like a nagging echo, a harsh lesson that the folks we lean on hardest can sometimes cut us the deepest, and picking up the pieces means walking over the wreckage of what we used to have. I stood there for what seemed like forever. The desert stretched out quiet around me, broken only by the far-off sound of my own misery, and it sank in that every move I'd make from then on would carry the marks of this double cross. I came to in a place that felt infinite and mean as hell. The blazing sun hammered down, its rays tearing through my skin and frying my sore muscles without mercy. Every inch I pushed forward was a wrestle between my fading strength and this stubborn drive to keep going. I'd crumpled in that relentless desert, my head all foggy from the pain and the sting of what she'd just pulled. The sand under me was scorching and stiff, pressing up like it wanted to trap me in this dead-end nowhere. I scrambled to stand, every twitch a sharp jab reminding me how bad I'd been messed up. My pulse thumped loud in my ears as I battled this spinning fog trying to eat my thoughts alive. Each step had my body yelling no way. The pain in my stomach was steady and vicious, every pulse screaming I wasn't supposed to be out here, ditched and on my own. I kept telling myself I had to keep moving, stopping meant letting this brutal desert win. Right then, I was caught between terror and grit, scared of what the endless sand and blistering heat could do, but hell-bent on hanging on to life even when it felt like luck had turned its back on me. I shuffled along slow, every step careful, scanning that wavy horizon for any hint of rescue or shade. The desert's huge, empty sprawl threw me off, like a maze of dunes with no warmth, just the icy truth that I was totally alone. I zeroed in on my breaths, fighting to stay sharp even as panic started creeping up. My mind was racing. I kept seeing Emma's icy grin and hearing her laugh bounce around in my skull, a nasty slap of the betrayal I had to choke down. I could still picture her waving as she peeled out, that look in her eyes so final as the car sped off. It was like she'd wiped out every bit of the love we'd had, leaving nothing but this gaping pit where trust used to sit. The desert just taunted me with its hush. Every wind gust reminded me nobody was coming to pull me out. I gripped my stomach, the hurt ramping up with every move, but I kept pushing. I couldn't let the shadows take me under. As I dragged on through that slow, grueling trek, my head flipped between flickers of hope and pits of gloom. I thought back to when Emma and I mapped out our days ahead, when every bump in the road looked like something we'd beat together. Now that future was busted into 1,000 pieces, blown apart by the wind that wouldn't quit. I tripped over rough patches, the sand sliding under me like some alive thing dead set on holding me back. Every motion tested my guts, and minute by minute, the loneliness piled on heavier. I started wondering if this ache would ever let up, or if I was stuck roaming these dead dunes, a lost guy destined to just vanish. Way off, I swore I caught a flicker of something moving, a faint tease of life in all that emptiness. My heart jumped at the slim chance of getting saved, and I picked up my pace even though my beat-up body was flashing warning lights. I shouted out, my voice breaking as it got lost in the wind's howl, but nothing came back. That quick spark of hope fizzled fast under the hard truth of where I was. I was on my own, stuck in a place that didn't care about a guy's broken heart. Every step was about staying alive, a frantic scramble to dodge the end I could feel creeping closer. I held tight to memories of better times, the feel of her touch that once meant comfort and love. Now, those were the only things keeping my legs moving. The desert didn't give a rip about my fight, it was this big, hollow platform where my life was coming undone bit by bit. I knew if help didn't show up soon, the non-stop grind of time and heat would mark me as another casualty of this heartless stretch. Time crawled on, feeling like forever, and my energy started slipping away. But even with all the hurt and hopelessness, there was this tiny fire of stubbornness still kicking inside me. I wasn't about to let the desert write my last page. Every brutal step was me digging in, swearing to beat the odds, even when my whole self was begging to quit. This trip turned into proof of how bad I wanted to live, a war against the torture in my bones and the emotional cuts she'd left behind. Right there, I got it, surviving wasn't just about muscle, it was about clawing for the core of who I am. I'd keep going, even if the desert was plotting my downfall, 'cause deep down, I knew throwing in the towel wasn't on the table, no matter how rotten fate had gotten. I snapped awake, staring up at the stark white ceiling of a hospital room, my head throbbing and my body limp from pain. An oxygen mask hugged my face, its steady hiss whispering that I was still in the game. For a second, I couldn't believe I'd made it, not after that cruel, unyielding desert nearly finished me off. I tried piecing it together, the agonizing haul across the sand, the betrayal that left me torn up and bleeding out, then those fuzzy blackouts that swallowed me whole. As I started coming around, the fact I'd been pulled out hit me square. I remembered blurry faces hovering over me. This nice couple, Mike and Sarah, popped up out of nowhere. Their eyes, full of worry but steady as hell, were the first clue somebody gave a damn. I could hear their calm tones telling me to hang on while they dialed for help. Flashes of the chopper ride, paramedics hustling, nurses scrambling with my stretcher, they all flickered through my head. Those folks were my rope, yanking me back from the brink in a way I'd never felt before. Every little shift hurt like hell, but there was this faint glow of thanks mixed with the gut punch shock of being stabbed in the back. Here I was, scrapping to stay alive, not just against that brutal desert, but against the double cross from the one I'd handed my heart to. In that clean, bright hospital room, the rough memories of that cursed day came rushing back. I could practically see Emma's frosty smirk as she waved from the car, her laugh blending with the engine's growl as she vanished down the road. Knowing she didn't just walk out, but left me to rot out there, was a tough one to swallow. I could still feel how my body shrieked with every move, each step a fight against hurt and disbelief. Now, in this room buzzing with monitors and quiet voices, that betrayal sank deep into my core. The door swung open fast, and 2 cops stepped in. They brought this weird mix of relief and unease with M. I clocked one as Detective Johnson. Guy had a hard stare and a no BS vibe. He walked up slow, his eyes running over my wrecked frame before locking onto mine with this look that was half pity, half blame. "Your wife dumped you out there in the desert, didn't she?" he said, his voice heavy with disbelief but firm as hell. Those words bounced around in the quiet room, each one slamming home a truth I'd been too scared to own up to. His tone sliced through the mess in my head, and that sting of betrayal hit fresh all over again. It wasn't just the physical beatdown I was wrestling now, it was the emotional rubble piled up behind me. I'd put my faith in Emma, bought into a love I thought couldn't break. But here I was, living proof of how fast trust can get smashed to bits. While Detective Johnson kept talking, bits and pieces of old chats with Emma floated back to me, her snippy tone whenever I was hurting, and that breezy wave she'd throw my way, like my pain was just a minor annoyance. The weight of what she'd done crashed over me like a thick mist, blotting out any trace of the guy I used to be. Things got heavier when the detective dropped that Mike and Sarah, those hikers, had snapped pics of me before help showed up. He said those shots were making the rounds, cops had M, social media was buzzing with M, and they were hard proof of what went down that night. Anger mixed with shock hit me like a 1-2 punch. My agony was caught on camera, my weakest moment laid out for everyone to gawk at, all to nail the woman I used to love. It felt like my misery had turned into some twisted show for the world, a brutal wake-up call to what her betrayal really cost me. Lying there, with my gut throbbing like a constant drumbeat of how fragile I was, it clicked that getting saved wasn't just about keeping me breathing. It was about peeling back a lie that had been buried too long. Those photos Mike and Sarah took were gonna make Emma answer for what she did. Stuck in that sterile hospital vibe, with machines humming low and voices mumbling in the background, I felt this weird split, relieved to still be kicking, but gutted knowing she'd left me out there to die on purpose. During those endless recovery hours, trying to wrap my head around it all, the truth slammed me hard. This wasn't just some bad luck crapshoot, I'd been stabbed in the back. The love I'd banked on was all smoke and mirrors, and the woman I'd trusted had shown her real face in the worst way imaginable. That hospital room, with its chilly, stiff walls, just sat there watching my insides twist up. Every beep from the machines, every soft shuffle of a nurse's shoes, hammered home how breakable life is, and how trust, once it's busted, ain't ever coming back whole. In that clear-headed second, with my past pressing down like a ton of bricks, I swore I wouldn't let this double-cross be who I am. I'd claw my way back, bit by bit, and put my life together again. Even lying there, banged up physically and torn up inside, I knew this wasn't the end of my road. Getting pulled out gave me a do-over, a shot to face the ugly reality of my marriage and rebuild what she'd ripped away. It was a make-or-break moment, where I had to pick, let her betrayal crush me, or use it to fire up a tougher, better me. In that hushed, heavy room, I made a quiet deal with myself. I'd tackle whatever came next full on, and I wouldn't let Emma's shadow dim the future I still had ahead. Even as I fought to breathe and figure out how huge this mess was, a little flame of grit flickered deep down, a spark to lead me out of the dark and into a place where I could finally break free. I was propped up in my hospital bed, still shaky and patching myself up, when this steady knocking started echoing through the room, sharp, persistent, and dragging a bad vibe with it. I'd barely started gluing the shards of my wrecked life back together when the doorbell chimed, hinting at news I wasn't ready to hear. Struggling to sit up and rub the grogginess from my eyes, a nurse walked in holding a tablet, her face flipping from cool concern to something like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I grabbed it with shaky hands and squinted at the screen. Bam, there it was in big, bold letters, Arizona guy dumped in desert by wife, pulled out by hikers barely alive. My stomach knotted up as I read it again, each word slashing through whatever faith I'd once had in my marriage. Then the screen flickered to some blurry video of me, half sprawled on that barren sand, eyes shut like I'd given up. I couldn't believe it, my lowest points were out there for everyone, splashed across TVs and scrolling through feeds like some sick highlight reel. The shock hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just a headline, it was my life stripped naked, her betrayal remixed for the world to judge. I tried to keep my breathing steady, running back through every brutal detail of that desert day, the scorching heat frying me, the non-stop ache in my gut, and worst of all, Emma's smug little grin as she waved from the car peeling out. That screen cranked up every memory, and for a split second, I felt like I was staring at some stranger's story, not recognizing the guy caught on tape. I flipped the tablet over in my hands, wishing I could wipe those images away and grab back some shred of pride from the embarrassment tailing me now. The nurse piped up then, her voice all cautious, saying Mike and Sarah, the ones who saved me, had shot that video. It had blown up online, kicking up a storm of anger and pity all at once. I just sat there, dazed, my heart thumping with this mashup of feelings, pissed about my privacy getting torched, sad for the life I'd lost, and this odd, dull relief that the truth was finally out there for everyone to see. When she stepped out, the TV in the waiting area kicked on with a live news bit. I dragged myself up, every move a grind, and shuffled over to the little lounge next to my room. The screen wasn't just showing my pics, it had people talking, cops weighing in. The reporter's voice was steady but pressing, laying out how some Arizona dude got left to die by his wife, a twist that left the country stunned and bummed out. My whole world tilted as I took it in, each word bouncing around in the empty spots of my heart. The camera swept over cop cars and flashing lights, and for a sec, I caught a glimpse of our old house in the background, quietly watching our marriage fall apart. The story was growing legs fast, turning my private hell into a full-on public mess. Random folks started guessing why Emma did it, and hashtags like #deserted-husband and #justice-for-Jake popped off online, riding a wave of people's outrage. I plopped down there, stuck between wanting to hide from all the staring and needing to figure out how it had spun so wild. Every headline, every news clip, landed like a jab to my already beat-up spirit. It hit me that my pain wasn't mine anymore, it was part of some big, shared warning about love going sour. Inside, I kept hearing myself ask, how could she pull this? How could she just ditch me like that? That question rattled around, tying itself up with every time she'd ignored me, every empty promise of better days that had faded away. Right then, I felt this huge gap between the guy I used to be and this new me, shaped by betrayal and everyone's eyes on me. But in that ache, I caught a glint of something solid, a drive to take my life back, to make sure my story didn't just end as some pity party for strangers to pick apart. That TV shock, as rough as it was busting into my world, turned out to be a game changer. It shoved the truth right in my face, made me own up to the deep gashes Emma's cold moves had left. Standing there in that hospital lounge, seeing my hurt played out for all to see, I swore I'd flip this moment, not let it drown me in gloom, but use it to spark something new. I'd grab the reins of my story, rebuild from the ruins of busted trust, and dig deep to patch up wounds no camera could touch. Walking away from that screen, with the reporter's voice and flashing pic still ringing in my ears, I knew I'd hit a fork in the road. Every tough step back to my bed carried anger, sadness, and this shaky little hope, that someday, the hurt would turn into strength, and this betrayal tale would morph into one about surviving and starting over. I was perched on my hospital bed, head still spinning and body sore from the marks that awful day left behind. The little TV blared news reports, laying out every scrap of proof that landed Emma in cuffs. It felt bizarre and raw all at once. Every tiny thing stuck with me, her icy voice, that smug twist of her lips as she ditched me in the desert. Now it was all out there, the truth glaring under a spotlight. Relief washed over me knowing justice might finally swing my way, but it tangled with this ache, sadness that the woman I'd loved was now a public disgrace. I could still hear Detective Johnson's gruff tone from when he grilled me in the hallway, his stare digging into me like he could see every buried hurt and unsaid scream. "Your wife left you out there, didn't she?" he'd said, no room for maybes in his voice. I just nodded, quiet, each word slicing fresh into my already roughed-up heart. The reporters ran through it all, pics Mike and Sarah snapped, texts between Emma and her buddy Chloe, even that shaky clip of me sprawled out helpless in the dirt. I couldn't wrap my head around how it all fit together, sketching out this cold, planned-out betrayal. My phone wouldn't quit buzzing, pals and random folks tossing out their shock and sorries. Stuff like #deserted_husband and #justice4Jake lit up online, every ping and nudge that my private nightmare was now everyone's show. I tried to stay locked in, thinking back to that day we left, me weak and hurting, trudging under that brutal sun, every step a slog against the heat and her stab in the back. Now, with Emma locked up and the news peeling back every ugly layer of our life together, it felt like my whole world was crumbling even more. The aftermath hit fast and fierce. Emma's cushy little life was falling apart right in front of me. Friends who used to flash her warm hellos were ghosting her now. Her family, who'd welcomed her with open arms, turned their backs in disgust. Even Chloe, who'd swapped those killer texts with her, cut her off cold. Word got around our house was getting seized, her job gone like dust in a breeze. The trial's shockwaves tore through the news, and I sat there stunned, watching my collapse replayed, those rescue photos, every gut-wrenching bit aired over and over. With each story, my heart toughened up, a steady resolve pushing out the grief. Even while I was still hurting, it dawned on me this mess, rough as it was, might be my ticket out. Her arrest wasn't just her getting slammed, it was my pivot point. I started seeing I didn't have to let her betrayal, or that desert hell, box me in. My lawyer, Tom Bennett, started calling, breaking down how serious her charges were, reckless endangerment, attempted manslaughter, the works. Every word he dropped carried this mix of payback and regret, payback 'cause the truth was breaking free, regret for all those wasted years and busted promises that dragged me to that moment. Days later, reporters swarmed her empty place, cops piecing together her scheme around the clock. I kept tabs on it all, news, online, feeling this odd calm settle in. Sure, justice was gonna be a slow, painful grind, but it was my path to taking my life back. Sometimes I'd roam the hospital's quiet halls, replaying it all, her brush off when I was hurting, that chilly goodbye at the Grand Canyon, and now her arrest flashing live. I was wrecked but weirdly fired up. The ache in my bones kept reminding me what I'd been through, but the guts I found in that pain sparked some hope. I decided her arrest wouldn't just be her public smackdown, it'd kick off a fresh start for me. I'd rebuild, brick by brick, from the wreck of our marriage. Every news blip and hashtag fueled my drive to own my story again. I saw her betrayal's fallout wasn't just her crash, it was a window into who we really were. Her moves landed her in a lonely, shameful spot, but they shoved me to face my own flaws and start the long haul to patch myself up. I started jotting down my thoughts, turning all that rage, hurt, and betrayal into a survival log, not to dwell on what I'd lost, but to map out how to find myself again. Right there, with reporters buzzing and hospital machines humming soft, I promised myself I was done being my past's punching bag. I'd take her arrest's fallout and use it to build a tougher, steadier me. While the world kept staring at Emma, I got it, my future was mine to shape. Every step I took screamed I'd survive, learn from the cuts, and craft a life clear of betrayal's shadow. So, with a heavy chest but a fired-up soul, I took on the fallout full force, knowing each day was me clawing back the guy I was supposed to be. I walked into that courtroom, heart dragging and head a mess of mixed-up thoughts. Whispers filled the place, papers rustled, and a low hum came from folks there to watch the trial play out. I sat in the witness box, hands shaky, trying to steady Em while the lights beat down, showing every scar from that desert day. It was wild to think the woman I'd loved was now on trial, pegged as a heartless schemer. The prosecutor kicked off, laying out what they had on Emma, slow, clear, pointing to texts she sent Chloe and those brutal pics from Mike and Sarah. My heart thumped as I listened, every word nailing down what I'd felt deep down. I could hear her snarky tone when I was in pain, see that careless wave like I was nothing. His voice hit like a sledgehammer, every detail slamming into my memory, locking in how real her betrayal was. When my turn came, I carried every ounce of that hurt. I got up, legs wobbly, sucked in a big breath, and started spilling what happened out there. I talked about the fire in my gut, the blinding sun, that unreal second I saw her grin as she sped off. The words came slow, but each one packed the truth I'd kept buried. I told Em how abandoned I felt, left to rot in a place that didn't care about a busted-up guy. I said the desert turned into this twisted reflection of my inner hell, throwing back how cruel love can get when it flips. Emma sat across the room, face blank and cold, wouldn't look at me, but I caught a shiver of fear behind her front. The defense tried spinning it, said it was a mix-up, that she freaked out and didn't mean to leave me for dead, just a stress snap. But as I laid out every bit, her snide remarks, that lazy wave, the instant I knew I was alone, my voice got solid. I told Em about the endless hours of agony, how hope dried up with every step on that scorching sand. My words rang out in that hushed room, each one a jab back at the wrong she'd done me. The air in there got thick as they rolled out the proof, piece by piece. The prosecutor played those recordings, flashed the texts, and I saw the jury perk up, eyes big, soaking in the real deal. Relief hit me weird, glad the truth was out, but sad for the trust I'd lost forever. I thought back to those doubtful nights, wondering if my love could have fixed it, knowing now that warmth was gone for good. As the trial dragged on, I watched her fake front crumble with every fact they dropped. The defense's sob story about her being a victim didn't hold up against the straight-up truth I'd spilled. That courtroom fight wasn't just law stuff, it was the last showdown of a marriage built on lies. Every word I said felt like grabbing a chunk of myself back, every memory I shared out loud a step to take me back. Right then, I got that the trial wasn't just about nailing her for the desert. It was about cracking open how rotten our bond had gotten, stripping down a love that had turned into cold neglect. That room was where my past and now smashed together, every charge and bit of evidence linking the guy I was to the one I'm turning into. Looking at the jurors, I felt this fresh purpose kick in. I wasn't just the trashed husband left in the dust anymore, I was a guy staring betrayal down, dead set on rebuilding from the mess of a marriage that tanked. By day's end, as the place cleared out and the trial's weight started lifting off me, I knew this clash was just the start of getting whole again. The truth was out there, pain wasn't going anywhere, but I felt this flicker of hope that tomorrow could bring some payback, a shot at peace in a life finally cut loose from betrayal's chains. I was sitting in this hushed little room at the courthouse when the judge dropped the hammer, 10 solid years locked up for Emma. The ruling was straight and no nonsense, but I could tell her real payback wasn't just gonna be those icy prison walls. I had this gut feeling her life out here would hit her way harder than any jail time ever could. I walked out of there with my chest feeling heavy, eyeing the swarm of reporters and gawkers buzzing around, their quiet chatter slicing through the stillness. The news folks had spun her betrayal into this big, loud circus, and just like that, Emma's name was all over, famous for the worst reasons. That night, I flicked on the tiny TV in my bare-bones new place and caught the updates. The pictures were sharp as hell, headlines screaming, "Notorious Backstabber," and "Desert Betrayal," her face, one I used to know so well, now smeared with the stink of what she'd done. Folks we used to hang with, neighbors, friends, had all pulled away. Every time I stepped outside, I'd catch those low whispers and side-eye glares. Still hurting like hell, I couldn't shake this tiny wave of relief creeping in. Emma's whole setup had caved in. Her family wrote her off, and the handful of buddies still around bailed too. I heard later the cops took her house, and her job vanished faster than spit in the wind. Even Chloe, her old ride-or-die, wouldn't say her name anymore. Every call or text that pinged through just hammered it home, her good name was trashed. It hit me that her punishment stretched way past those 10 years. The world had turned its back, leaving her to chew on the sour fallout of her choices. While she rotted in a cell, out here made damn sure she'd never claw back to anything normal. I'd think back to those days I'd wait for her to come home, hoping for a warm grin, only to get hit with that frosty shrug. Now it clicked, she'd picked her road, and it dumped her straight into loneliness and shame. Bit by bit, I started piecing my life back together, finding comfort in the little wins. I ditched town for a fresh spot where nobody knew my story, and that's where the healing kicked in, body and mind. I'd take these long strolls through peaceful parks, each step reminding me I've got some fight left in me. It wasn't quick or easy, but day by day, I saw you could build something new even after a gut punch like that. The people in my new digs didn't see me as that wrecked guy from the desert, they saw someone who'd made it through, tougher for it. Random folks would toss out, "Man, you've got some grit," or "Not many could have pulled through that." Those words sparked this quiet pride in me, a solid nod that I was still here. Surviving wasn't just about crawling out of that sand or pushing through the pain, it was figuring out how to breathe again after everything I cared about got ripped away. Over time, I shook off that gnawing bitterness that almost ate me alive. Evenings became my time to mull over what was, and I started seeing forgiveness wasn't about her, it was my way to ditch the load of rage and hurt. I got into scribbling down what I'd been through, turning it into this journal that was half therapy, half roadmap for what's next. Every line I put down was me stepping away from yesterday and closer to a piece I could finally grab. The trial and all that came after schooled me hard on trust, love, and what betrayal costs you. I figured out sometimes people do stuff to show you who you really are, and even when it's pitch black, there's a little glow of hope ready to catch fire. Years rolled by, and the headlines faded out, the media's attention span running short. Still, Emma popped into my head, not with hate, but like a marker of the hell I'd walked through. Her punishment wasn't just the court's call, it was the world's non-stop finger-pointing that wouldn't let her sins slide. In those calm night hours, parked on my little apartment balcony staring at the city lights, this deep peace settled over me. I'd been handed a redo, a shot to put my life back together my way. The desert stole a ton from me, but damn if it didn't show me the steel I've got inside. While Emma dealt with the mess she made, I got the chance to grow, learn, and keep pushing ahead. And in that push, I didn't just survive, I found a calm I thought I'd lost for good. It had been 2 years since that damn trial, and life had settled into this slow, steady groove. I kept on with the healing, moving farther from those old ghosts, landing in a quiet town where the desert's whispers and betrayal's weight were just faint echoes. My days were about fixing the broken bits of me, leaning into simple stuff, morning park walks, coffee at this little local spot, and this creeping hope sneaking back in. I was starting to think the worst was in the rearview, that I could live without Emma's crap haunting me all the time. But life's got this knack for yanking the past right back when you're not looking. One cool afternoon, I hit up this cozy cafe that had turned into my hideout these last few months. The soft chatter, clinking cups, and an old tune humming on the radio gave me this normal I'd almost forgotten. I slid into my go-to-corner spot, perfect for watching the world roll by the big windows while I nursed my coffee and let my mind wander. Then this figure stepped in, and something about how she moved made me freeze. It was Chloe. Her name used to bounce around in those rough talks from way back. My heart did a quick skip when I clocked her shy, unsure steps. She'd been Emma's tightest pal, and though she didn't do much in the whole mess, her words helped sink our marriage for good. I kept my eyes on her as she scoped the place, our gazes locking for a beat. There was this quick flash of guilt and doubt in her look, stuff I'd never caught before. For a second, I was hit with this mix, anger, sadness, and this odd itch to know more. I wasn't banking on seeing her today, but fate's got its own playbook. I gave a little nod, signaling her over, and after what felt like forever, she shuffled to my table. "Jake," she said, voice so soft it barely broke a whisper. I nodded back, stuck between being polite and the old pain still kicking around. She paused, then sat, her whole vibe weighed down like regret was dragging her every move. I didn't even know where to start when I heard, Chloe kicked off, eyes glued to the table like she'd find answers in the scratched-up wood. Her hands twitched, giving away how rattled she was. I figured she was just blowing off steam. Never thought she'd really, she trailed off, and the quiet between us swelled with unsaid sorries and shared hurt. I studied her face, digging for what was real in her words, and all I saw was regret staring back. "How's she holding up?" I asked low, simple words hauling the whole damn load of what went down. Chloe glanced up, her eyes hitting mine with this blend of sadness and a tired kind of acceptance. "Miserable," she said, each syllable slow and thick with guilt. I didn't push more, that one word packed a whole life of fallout and broken deals. We traded a tiny nod, this unspoken deal that some stuff's better left quiet. We sat there a good while, the cafe's hum fading out as my past roared back in. I could almost feel that desert heat again, hear her laugh that used to light me up and cut me down. Chloe being there was like a slap reminding me of a page I'd fought to shut. But here it was, flipped open again by a random run-in at my usual spot. I'm out here on my little balcony as the sun dips low, watching the city lights blink on one by one, and there's this cool breeze just sweeping away the last bits of a rough past. I think back to that endless desert, the scorching sun beating down, and the sting of betrayal that left me busted up and on my own. But look at me now, still kicking, still sucking in air, and figuring out how to live again, bit by bit. Each morning, I wake up with those old memories that used to drown me in sadness, but I'm trying to flip them into lessons these days. I've learned the hard way that even the deepest cuts from back then can mend up with time and a little TLC from some fresh hope. In the evening's soft glow, something stirring in me, a cocktail of relief, thankfulness, and this careful kind of excitement that says I'm not stuck as the guy stuff happened to, but the one picking how to keep going. I can't shake those grim days sprawled out in the desert, every move a fight against hurt and being totally alone, when the woman I loved turned her back and left me lost. The hospital room's stark truth still sticks with me, those flashing lights, the ugly proof that made my private hell everybody's business. But every hurdle I've jumped has shown me more of who I really am. Turns out, I've got this toughness buried under all that fear and pain, a grit that gets bigger every time I pull through. The arrest, the trial, all that messy fallout, they were dark times that used to cloud everything up. But now, sucking in this crisp night air, I get that those moments carved me into a guy who can climb out of the wreckage and start fresh. When the night gets quiet and the city's alive with its low buzz, I pull out my beat-up notebook and scribble down what's on my mind, my dreams, my what-ifs, even the stuff I wish I'd done different. I jot down those long, brutal days that hammered in how much I need to respect myself, set some lines in the sand, and forgive, not for Emma, but to cut myself loose from all that anger and grief. I write to keep track of how the guy I was, smashed by her double cross, got patched up slow with these everyday doses of kindness, stubbornness, and hope. I'm building something new, just for me, out from under the weight of what used to be. Every word I scratch out reminds me there's good stuff ahead. I've figured out moving on ain't about erasing what happened, it's about taking what it taught me to make smarter calls and shape a life that's really mine. Each day tosses up something new to tackle, but it also hands me a shot at finding happiness in the little things, a grin from someone on a crowded street, kids cracking up in the park, or the cozy feel of a hot tea mug on a chilly morning. I've started cheering for these small wins, 'cause they're the bricks stacking up a life pulled out of the rubble of old hurts. I'm even cracking the door open to new pals and maybe love down the line, though I'm taking it easy, knowing healing's more like a twisty backroad than a straight shot. I see now my story doesn't wrap up with getting stabbed in the back or losing it all, it keeps rolling with this steady heartbeat that won't quit. I've learned every mark I've got tells a piece of my tale, one about hanging in there, bouncing back, and getting up again. Looking out at the night, it's not just the city's twinkling lights I see, it's me staring back, a guy who's been through a hell of a storm and's ready to face tomorrow with some guts. There's this deep calm in knowing I made it past the worst, and yeah, the future's a big question mark, but it's a clean slate for new chapters. That past full of betrayal and loss showed me how much trusting myself matters and how strong forgiving can make you. Sure, some days those old ghosts try pulling me back, but every step I take is one more away from that dark and closer to the life I've earned. I'm pushing ahead, day by day, breath by breath. Every morning's got a little win that keeps me going. Tonight, with the city snoozing and stars popping out, I lean into the quiet, it's telling me I'm free at last, free to dream big, free to love again, free to build a life packed with hope, toughness, and a peace that sticks around. Another story wraps up on Top Stories Hub. Make sure to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and drop your reactions in the comments.